Hello, 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 hello. Is the gang all here? Are the Avengers assembled? There's one of the Avengers. There's the other. All right. Hello, hello, hello. Good evening. Banter, banter, banter. Waiting for there's Karla with a K. Wonder Twin powers activate.
That's right.
Form of a Karla. Shape
That's
of
right.
a Karla. Good evening. I am Carla Stillwell, director, playwright, cultural historian of Black Joy, and producer at Collaboration. We thank you so much for hanging in with us. We have some technical difficulties this evening, but the gang is here. We are ready and prepared. Welcome to the 30th episode. What? Of Crucial Connections. Our topic tonight is fair pay is fair play. Why pay equity is good for business. Crucial Connections is Collaboration's monthly gathering around the digital campfire to cultivate our connections and personal obligations to each other. As we delve deeper into topics around equitable pay standards, I would like to introduce my friend and my colleague, our special co-host, Elsa Hiltner. Elsa is Collaboration's Director of Development and is an organizer on pay equity. Her essays and data-driven resources on labor and pay equity have inspired systemic change in the theater industry. Elsa is a co-founder of On Our Team, we'll drop that in the chat, a Chicago-based organization working to build pay equity in the theater industry, and the creator of the Pay Equity Standards, we will also drop that in the chat, a system for establishing and publicly recognizing pay equity within an organization. She is on the Research and Development Committee of the Chicago Arts Census, the first study of arts workers in Chicago, focused on economics, demographics, and equity of life. Take it if you haven't yet. Take the survey in 2021. If you didn't do it, take it now. She was honored to receive the Michael Merritt Arts Advocacy Award. And this is the homie. Welcome, Elsa.
Thank you, Karla. It's so nice to be here. And thanks for everybody being here to talk about fair pay in the arts. It's a really important topic. So glad to spend this time to do that. Wanted to start out with, if you value paying artists a living wage, and I hope and assume you all do, please join Collaboration in this work by becoming a Collaboractivist. It's a membership program. It starts at $1 a month. It goes up to $200 a month, so you can support more artists if you go for that level. And it helps us continue our work to incite social change and pay artists equitably while we do it. Plus, you get great benefits. If you're not already a member, go to collaboration.org to learn more and join, and we'll put that link in the chat. I am very excited, obviously, to talk about pay equity in the arts. A lot of my work on pay equity and with On Our Team is focused on growing consensus on the issue, and the more we normalize talking about pay and transparency and fair labor conditions in the arts, the better. A few weeks ago, we had a really great conversation on Becoming with Collaboration and Free Street and Second Story about pay equity case studies from those organizations who are centering fair pay. You can see that episode on our YouTube channel. We'll put the link in the chat, and subscribe while you're there too.
Our guests tonight, I'm so excited, are Carla Rivera and Ali Drumm. Carla is a writer, performer, activist, and arts advocate that has leveraged her gift of storytelling to uplift and create opportunities for, with, and in divested communities. Carla is a former artistic associate of Teatro Vista and former company member of Urban Theater Company. Currently, she serves as the executive director of the historic Free Street Theater, is a company member of Second Story in Chicago, and author of the first ever commissioned young audiences piece for the Joffrey Ballet, Redefines Home. Carla continues to perform in venues and Zoom rooms across the country and actively teaches storytelling and consults on advocacy initiatives. She is a native of, say it for me, Carla.
Mayagüez, Puerto Rico.
Hey, because I was going to mess that up with my Southern Chicago tongue. And holds a BA from Columbia College, my alma mater, Chicago's Department of Film and Video, with a graduate studies at New York University. And our dear friend Allie Drumm is the manager of operations for Second Story, Chicago's oldest storytelling organization, where she oversees contracting and operations for more than 100 artists across at least 15 events annually. In addition to her theater work at companies like Looking Glass and Steppenwolf, Allie has led project management, facilitation, and development of e-learning workshops for Fortune 500 companies across multiple sectors. Today, she lives in Albany Park with her wife and a menagerie of pets. And I'm hoping that we see one. I need at least one animal to jump into the frame, because it wouldn't be Zoom if an animal didn't jump into frame, right? We learned that over the last 2 years. Thank you both so much for being here with us. So let's begin. Our panelists are here, and let's get started. Elsa, I'm gonna throw it to you to just give us a little context around the conversation.
Yeah, it's helpful to start with the definitions. We're all talking about the same thing. Pay equity is compensating worker roles without bias. It's essentially equal pay for equal work. And it's important to take that holistic view, both of the types of compensation that are offered and the types of workers within the organization.
Cool. So to the virtual floor. When did you realize in your individual businesses you would benefit from paying people well? And by well, I don't mean, well, there are organizations where people are making $100,000, $500,000 a year. But, most of us regular folks, well means paying people so they can pay their rent and have one job and focus on your job. So they can eat and live indoors. So when did you individually realize that paying people in an equitable way would benefit your bottom line? And that can go to anyone on the panel.
You want to go, Carla? You want me to go first?
Go for
All
it.
right. So I come from a production management background, and in a freelance capacity, a lot of what that means is finding folks like designers or technicians to help to be a part of a project. And it has always been difficult to find folks with low rates. I remember trying to be a freelance production manager, even 2015, and trying to find technical directors and only being able to pay them $300 for months of manual labor. The stipend didn't reflect the work that needed to get done. So really early on, struggling to find folks with low rates. And then specifically, there was a director a couple years ago who had worked with us before and straight up was like, look, I love you guys. I love what you do. And I can't afford to work here. I need this amount hourly. And until you get to that, I just can't do it. And that was a particularly impactful moment, I think, is the
Mhm.
grace of that person to spell that out for me.
So I think there's kind of me personally, and then there's kind of the Free Street story. I would say a lack of pay equity had seriously derailed my own artistic career. You know, I always say, I think I'd be further along, or I'd be a lot more prolific as an artist if I was able to you know, raise a family on an artist's wage. Or even not even raise a family, but just even as an individual. I mean, look, I was 18 years old doing a free internship at the Latino Chicago Theater Company in the late 90s, and my mom took me out of it, right? My mom was like, they're not paying you? No, you need to get your ass a job. And so there is this thing, and particularly in communities where we have a history of living in poverty, you know, this isn't a, you know, we are told that the only way that you can actively become and survive as an artist is if you come from money. And that was what was messaged to me directly. I think if you were around for Lauren's story in the last session, she gave a different trajectory in terms of, you know, paying their dues and co-signing on that and all of those things. I came from a very different experience, which was, this is not for you because we as a family do not have a way, no matter how talented you are, to give you the platform to be able to do that, because there is no economy that can support you there. Right. And we currently still live largely in that reality. So, you know, I would say that, you know, pay equity has always been something kind of fundamentally in the back of my mind, because, you know, it's pretty asinine that both statewide and nationally, the arts bring in more money than tourism and agriculture. But, you know, but we still can't pay our artists, right? And I think that the sector and folks from other sectors have just kind of signed on to this starving artist, you know, romantic vision of what it is to live out your vocation and not eat. And that's problematic. And so at Free Street, our ethos has always been around economic and geographic accessibility, but specifically around accessing it either as an audience member and even as a maker, as an art maker and as a collaborator. And so Free Street has always paid people, has not, but it was really when we were turning 50 and we were amidst, and this predates me, I also want to say that, because I came in as ED in October of 2019. And, you know, although I had participated in the 50th anniversary work, I was not on staff. But in talking to my artistic director, Goya Paz, you know, she was telling me the story about, you know, putting up Still Here. And there was just a moment that was like, okay, we really need to make this commitment. We need to have, and I talk about this a lot too in other areas of the work, is that we have a beautiful ethos externally, and many arts organizations have beautiful ways of creating environments for folks in a front-facing way, but that ethos doesn't always match internally. And so how if our people are also our communities, and if we are by, in, for, about, and with our communities, then pay equity goes hand in hand with the art making. And so we have been since FY20, which is really, you know, at the start and at the height of the pandemic, starting at a base rate of $15 an hour. I don't know if we were the first, but we may have been among the first. I don't have that specific data. But, you know, and it was incredibly important for us to do so, especially during the pandemic when so many of our people were losing their jobs. And so we pivoted our budget not only to continue to, you know, to pay our folks on staff and our contractors, but also added more contractors because we had to pivot to digital and things like that. So it is, you know, equity kind of writ large is baked into who we are as an institution. And so this was a no-brainer. It was just about the how.
And on that, I know Second Story, from my conversations with Allie and Lauren, also, it was a bit of a hard sell to the board to make the leap and, you know, trust that the extra funds would be made up. So I don't know, Karla, how it was for you, but Allie, could you talk about how you sold it to the board and how you convinced people that it would long-term be good for business?
Yeah. So for some folks, it was not a hard sell. Some folks got it right away. But that being said, Second Story is real stories by real people, which means that sometimes we have folks telling stories who would not call themselves artists, like they're from all sorts of occupations. And so when we presented this to the board, some of those folks who have corporate jobs were like, you know, I do this because I love it. You don't need to pay me at all, let alone pay me more. And so then it was about bringing folks along with two different ideas. Is the first one is that making art is labor and labor should be compensated. And that there are folks who are able to waive their stipends or decline compensation or donate it back, whatever, you know, whatever they want to do. But that does not mean that we shouldn't be striving to increase those stipends regardless. People can still make that choice all they want. Please, I guess we're a nonprofit, but that should not be what we expect them to do. And that should not be what we are striving to do. The second thing about bringing people along was really what you just kind of pointed out about this financial piece of it is, you know, assuaging the concerns from the board that were related to their role of this fiscal oversight. You know, like they were rightfully worried about us sinking the ship because it doesn't really do anyone any good to pay people really well for like 3 years and then have to close the organization. So part of it was also about bringing them along with the idea that like we can grow the budget sustainably and we have the backing of funders and donors and our community with that. And so ours is a little bit different, but a similar sort of trajectory of Free Street in that, you know, we went from, I'll just use Storytellers as an example, made $30 in FY19, made $10 in the year following that. They make $15 an hour now, and we're still talking about, you know, how do we keep increasing that? Because for when you think about freelancers and 1099 and all of the extra costs that come with that, you know, you're paying your own health insurance, you're paying your own taxes. It's still not enough. It never ends.
I just want to interject, Karla. I know you're going to jump in, but I just always want to remind people that $15 an hour for a 40-hour week is $31,000, $31,500 a year.
Yeah.
It's not that much money. It's still like if you make $31,500 a year, you still need a household with another person making at least $30,000 a year to be able to live in a place like Chicago or LA or Seattle or New York. Like you still need a second income to make that make sense. So I just want to give people perspective because people throw out $15 an hour like it's a big effing deal. And it really is only $31,500 a year. So with that in mind, as we continue this conversation, you know, that's a living wage. Like that's just a touch above the poverty line, and you still need a second income if you have children, if you have adult parents that need care. And that's the other thing we don't think about. People like, you don't have any kids. Well, some people have adult parents that need care. Some people have adult family overseas, and then others that they are supporting. As Americans, that's what happens. We're a melting pot. So we just need to keep all of that in mind as we have this conversation. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. No, I talk about wage equity so much, and this $15 an hour thing, I think in my own house, that the internet is, I believe that it is plotting against me, because I will watch my streaming shows and that Amazon commercial keeps coming up, and I want to throw my phone at the TV, because, you know, they have this brilliant marketing campaign about how they're, you know, they've got this $15 wage. And I'm like, y'all, you're fucking Amazon. One.
Like, you literally should have $25 an hour. Dead ass. You're Amazon.
Minimum.
What?
Base.
Minimum 25.
Entry,
Base.
high school, you know.
Like, I shouldn't even have to be able to read really well to get $25 an hour from Amazon. Like, dead ass. What?
Yes.
Are you serious?
It was not a hard sell for our board. It wasn't, not at all whatsoever. I think the guiding, advice is always, how do we continue to do what we do the way that we do it out in the world, while also doing this? Because I build every year when we do the budget, I also build in COLA increases. You know, we for our internal staff, we've expanded our staff, and eventually want to move our part-timers to full-time, and those things. And so I will say that these last couple of years, we've been fortunate, because a lot of funders have moved from having, you know, specific dollars allocated to specific projects, and said, you know, do gen ops. And so that move, but, you know, from philanthropy during COVID to say, use this money the way you need to use it, was certainly a huge help for us. So that the flexibility of that funding, and I would certainly, you know, encourage, you know, philanthropy's got a long way to go in many respects, but I would certainly say, you know, particularly for those of us that are, you know, really in earnest doing this, and also the closer we are to the ground, and the more focused we are at the community level, trust us in what we're doing, and just give us the money so that we can do what we need to do. But yeah, for our board, it wasn't a big sell. We just, you know, every time it's, you know, budget season comes, we just have to make the numbers work, and we have to justify it, and we have to, you know, identify where the revenue is coming from. And, you know, as an executive director, my primary directive is to make sure people eat, right? And so, to that end, that is always a consistent challenge for me. And, you know, and we did this with very little fanfare, right? You know, we had no campaigns, we had no, you know, no rollout or pamphlet or whatever. We just did it. And so, and that's kind of how Free Street rolls anyway. But, you know, it is incumbent upon me as executive director to ensure, and to continue to advocate for not only kind of the large scale dollars, and then the public dollars, that, you know, that, you know, we advocate for, but then also, you know, how are we continuing to diversify our revenue? So we have Free Street Talks, which is our for hire wing, where we bring in our devising process and create active dialogues for corporate entities, foundations, and other organizations who are, you know, wrestling with challenging conversations, and we come in and we help support them. So that is a way that we do it. Philanthropy is another way. We don't make any money off of box office, and that's really not, you know, our goal as an organization, because we're all free or pay what you can, and have been so for over 50 years. So it really is that is what fuels me as ED, while the rest of our team works in the other areas. So it's less of a sell, but certainly more of a challenge to sustain it.
Well, it's interesting you
So
brought up too. Oh, sorry. Do you want to
no,
go
go
ahead?
ahead. No,
I
you
was
go.
just going to say it's interesting you brought up too this the revenue streams and this like corporate programs piece, because Second Story has a version of that too, right? And we're we're working on working on this Rising Tide project, which is it's through the Arts Work Fund, and there's a bunch of different pieces of it, but one of them is about establishing a very small cohort of arts organizations to help talk about like what has Second Story done and how could that be a tool for someone else, and what are your next steps, and how do we get one step further, and everyone's step looks different, and one of the things we keep thinking about is that revenue stream, right? Not every theater or arts organization has that kind of thing, and I don't have an answer for this, but my like question is like, is that necessary to be able to make some of these sustainable financial steps? Like, do you have to have that? Like, what if you don't have that? How do you still make different strides and steps forward? I don't have an answer. I'm just questions. It's all questions.
I'm so glad you said that, because that's what I was about to jump to for our
Yes,
next
Carla.
segment. So we had a meeting recently with the theater that's working on their what is it, IDEA, EDIL, whatever the acronyms are this week, right? And part of the thing with that organization, and this has happened, I've been doing this for 100 years. I'm 75 years older than everybody on this panel, but part of the conversation has been, who are you beholden to, right? Is it your subscribers? Because that's the old theater model. Or like, how do you get your revenue? Where's your money coming from? And a lot of organizations, nonprofit organizations, are beholden to the ticket buyers. The ticket buyers are a certain generation, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And the question is, because this organization is a multi-million-dollar organization, but they're kind of like a festival. So they have seasons where they produce, and the people in their region come to see all of that work, and they pay $75 a ticket. And so the fear of paying people well, of paying people equitably, of equity is, and doing equitable art is scary to their base. So they're afraid. They're afraid, right? I say this to say, like, how do you, and Elsa, I'm going to say collaboration, because I'm not going to talk about it, but how does collaboration, how does our team talk about it? How does Second Story and how does Free Street talk to the masses, their audience, about, look, this is what we're trying to do. This is what's right. This is what's good. This is what we should do. These are the ways that we're moving forward to be equitable and fair to the people that are your court jesters, the people that are your entertainment, the people that are here to make your life better and happy and fun. How can you honor them financially? How do you all have that conversation on the ground with your audiences?
I mean, I just want to add that pay equity is good for the art, right? I mean, if we are only allowing people with privilege to create art, it is currently a pretty limited type of art that gets made, and really limits the stories that we're able to tell, and then as an audience experience. And I think that because this is the system we're in right now, people don't realize what it could be if we started paying people in a way that allowed more people to tried this work, or, and so that is really valuable. And the other thing that I think people are recognizing more now than they did before the pandemic, and is that if you are putting out a diversity, equity, inclusion, access statement on your website, and you're not doing this work of pay equity, it's really just a statement. It's all forward facing. It's not activated in all the ways it needs to be activated. And pay equity really engages with access and increases diversity, and it intersects with all of those different areas. And so it's just a really important thing if you actually want to live out that statement and not just enjoy the facade of it. That's really important.
Well, and to that point, Elsa, I think as we talk about DEI, or my favorite is JEDI. Have y'all heard of JEDI? That's justice,
No.
equity, diversity, and inclusion. Yes.
I'm a nerd. This tickles me, Jedi.
So much vernacular, right? But I mean, I think that's the true test about, whether you're really about it, to be honest. Because otherwise, your DEI statement is a performance.
What also makes me think of, sorry, Carla.
And when we have conversations around equity and EDI, et cetera, the questions we always ask is, are you just trying to be compliant?
Right.
Or are you actually trying to engage in a culture shift and engage in a sector-wide shift that truly does create because if we are not paying people, if we're not, particularly when our communities, come from different economic backgrounds and do not have the privilege to work for free, you are not going to get the diversity that you aspire to have.
Right.
So, that's my 2 cents on that, and just to add value to what you were saying, Elsa.
And Carla, you said something when we did our becoming, and I've been quoting you for the last 2 weeks, and I'm probably going to put it on a t-shirt, that your budget is your morality.
It's a moral document. Budget is
it's a moral document.
That's
your
right.
budget is a moral document. What you have valued and put in your budget is a moral document. The reason that resonated with me is because, again, I'm 7,000 years old. I'm like Memnoch. I've been here for years. I've seen 1,000 budgets in my life. And budgets are organized a certain way. This is what we made. Woo! This is our revenue. And then after what we've gathered is a list of what we're going to spend. And it starts with, these are the people we're going to pay. These are the services we value. And these are the people we're going to employ to enact those services. Every budget I've ever seen, and I've done it myself, the people, the human beings that actually have to do the grunt work are at the bottom of the budget, and they make the least. And in the grand scheme of planning and whatever, there's some validity to, we have to have this before we hire that, right? So
Right.
That's okay.
Yeah.
But the numbers are never equitable or right. So when you said that, I was like, I'm gonna put it on a shirt. So I just wanted to put that in the ethers as we move to Elsa's question.
Oh, here, Allie, did you want to?
Yeah, I was just going to say a couple years ago, we were talking about pay and paying people more. And somebody that Second Star collaborates with a lot straight up was like, if you can't pay people, are you a professional organization or are you a club? And I think about that
What?
truly every day. I'm like, am I a professional or is this a club?
It's
Um,
a club.
is this a club? I put that into the space too. I think about it every day.
Is it work or a club? So we need a couple of shirts. We need
We'll
pay equity
we'll
shirts,
have like
right?
a whole line. It'll be great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that more organizations start doing this so that I mean these are such basic concepts that it's laughable when we talk about them, right? Like people should earn a living wage, and we should support access to arts careers, and it in ways feels so radical and also so laughably normal that it's absurd that we even have to talk about it. And so was wondering what advice you'd have to other organizations doing this work. And also tied to that, want to push back on the idea that we need more money to start this work, because we see a lot of organizations that have very large budgets who are not able to do this work, or have not started to do this work. So what advice would you have for organizations embarking on the process?
I would say first to acknowledge that not everyone is on the same pay equity journey, that it takes folks a long time, and that's okay. Um, the the other two things I would offer is that part of why it takes a long time is because it is about building or rebuilding trust and that communication, and uh, making those moves and actually putting the money and the effort and the continued effort behind it is about building trust. And I think the last thing is probably like you're never done with pay equity. It's years and it's lots of conversations, and it's, second star is at $15 an hour, and we're not done. We're not done trying to increase those stipends, and I hope we never are. And the key is really to like approach things with this curiosity and this generosity, because there are moments where it feels like come on, like when will you be satisfied? When we got to the goal, what is that enough? And the answer is never. I'm never going to be satisfied, because I think in a lot of ways our sector is so far behind and so inequitable, and it took generations of time to get to where we are, and it takes time to get to where we want to go.
Advice. I mean, I think I should probably written some things down, but I think a lot about accountability. When you are and your mission as an organization, and for Free Street, we are accountable to each other. We are accountable to our artists. We are accountable to the communities who we've promised accessibility and affirmation through the work that we create. And, so if that is our North Star as an organization, then, with the budget being the moral document, how does that speak to those tenets? And so, I invite organizations that are struggling with this to think about what their mission is and who they are accountable to, and examine their accountability, and maybe they need to shift who they are accountable to as well. And so it's not just about the internal inner workings of making it happen, but it is much larger than that. It is systemic. And so we are, as artists, fantastic at advocating for so many things.
Mm-hmm.
Free Street alone has addressed mental health, environmental racism. We have our show coming up in late May throughout June called 57 Blocks, that centers education, immigration, and incarceration with young folks. Like we are so good at uplifting so many topics and issues, as we should, but we aren't really excellent at advocating for ourselves as a sector.
Right.
So yes, there is a ton of internal work that needs to happen, and there is deep surgery that, for some of us, it's a no-brainer, and for others, there is deep surgery that needs to happen. There are people that need to go, and that includes board members, that includes standing up to funders, that includes having very difficult and real conversations, because we are programmed also to be subservient to our funders and to say thank you. And we're grateful. Like, we've got some really great funders, and I don't want to, light too much kerosene on that, right? Put too much kerosene on that. But in the same way that we need to be responsive to our communities at Free Street about what is happening and how we address it, so should the people that are supporting our work. And so those conversations need to happen. And so, I will always get on the soapbox of advocacy because we know how to do it. And we've been doing it. We've been doing it for everybody else but ourselves. And so we also need partnerships with other sectors that have buy-in, that also understand the fundamental essentialness of the arts. We did some work with the city and the league and the park district around cultural asset mapping. And our focus was in largely Spanish-speaking communities and Black and Brown communities on the Southwest side, where we identified over 160 cultural assets in the area. But our conversations with the communities was like, what kind of, if you could build your work, your ideal community, what would it look like? And at the center of that was that arts programming and arts organizations and arts presence was equally as important as social services. So, for folks who are in seats like mine, and who have a passion for advocacy generally, I implore you to really get on the boat of creating this systemic change and a cultural shift that builds the public will to make this happen. There's no reason why we shouldn't have a line item for public dollars in the state budget, and we shouldn't have a national endowment for the arts. We should have a line item in the country's budget for it. So that is, of course, a marathon and not a sprint. But so is this work kind of writ large. And so, what is your North Star? Really work collaboratively to make that happen. Really engage as many folks as you can in doing so. And of course, it is scaling with practicality, right? Scaling realistically. It will impact how you program. You may program less in order to make bigger impact. We may not have a cast of 15. We might have a cast of 9, right? And so, and while that might seem a little bit like, oh no, but then you're cutting positions altogether. If we're all doing it, then there will be more opportunities. And quite frankly, since we have shifted to this pay equity model, our artists are more loyal to us. They already were stands. They already were stands for Free Street. They loved what we did, but now it's they're able to take on less gigs. Right. How many of us have been, hustling when 3 shows are coming to the fore, and you got to hustle on all of them, and you're worried about making rent.
Right.
So, yeah, I hope that all made sense. I'm just kind of.
It made perfect sense. Listen, we are at time. This is our show. As we close this evening out, I would like to thank our esteemed panelists. Elsa, my good girlfriend, who I have to look at her face every day and love it. Karla, and Karla with a K, and Allie, and each of you that participated in this rich dialogue. I want you to go to collaboration.org for more information and to sign up, because we're going to be talking about all of these different layers of stuff for years to come. Stick around for a video from some of the work. So during the pandemic, Collaboration was like, we're going to record everything and we're just going to do all this creative art. So we have 1 million videos of like dope ass Chicago artists doing cold shit. So there is a video at the end of this. Stick around. It's amazing. It's called, this one is A Rose from Concrete, that was made during the pandemic. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and watch everything from our Crucial Connections. That's going to be dropped in the chat in a moment. Also, before we go, we cordially invite you to join on Tuesday, May 3rd for the next Becoming, titled A Life in Transition, a conversation with Jamie Black. This is a heartfelt conversation with actor, writer, comedian Jamie Black, as he shares his journey as a Black trans man in America and his perspective on how society has and has not changed in the past 20 years since he transitioned. And on Thursday, May 19th, for this gathering, the Crucial Connections gathering, titled Trans Lives Matter. So Jamie's going to come back and host a conversation with different BIPOC people from the trans community about what this is and what's going on and how it is impacting our environment, why this is a necessary conversation. Collaboration is dedicated to giving voice to our communities that are unheard. The reason we're here tonight is because the capitalists don't want to talk about pay equity because they don't think it serves them. But I think what Allie and Karla and Elsa have given us tonight is fair play. Fair pay is fair play. Like, when people feel honored, respected, and can eat and live indoors, they can give you more of what you want as an employee to serve your art. And art is, it's not a choice. Art is a human right, and it is part of, when we're all gone, when our flesh is dead and gone, what survives us is the art, right? So that is why we're having these conversations. Stay with us. Quick shout out to our programming is sponsored by the Feinberg Foundation, the Malnati Foundation, AB Chicago, and many others that support collaboration and have our back. Look at that. Look at all the people that love us and support us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for.
Yes, thank you.
This program on Collaborations Together Network is made possible by the support of our sponsors, AB Chicago, the Mark and Jeannie Malnati Foundation, the Joseph and Bessie Feinberg Foundation, and all of y'all watching and being here for us, like who we are and come and make this donation. Please log in and become a Collaboration um, member. Thank you for joining this Crucial Connections tonight, where we are hyper local and thinking global and dismantling oppression from all forms. And stick around for A Rose in the Concrete. Thank you so much. Thank you, Allie. Thank you, Carla. Thank you, Elsa.
A rose from the concrete. In my beloved city of Chicago, there are beautiful communities and beautiful historic figures where we live life in color. Where in communities like mine, we have people and beautiful scenery where the sun shines on us, where you can take your daughters to the park to see caterpillars. But we all got hit by that COVID epidemic, and we got tested in more ways than we expected. Suddenly, we have to social distance. There's not enough space. We're not safe around each other. The playgrounds are closed. Schools are suddenly closed. And we felt like we were in peril with social unrest, protests, crime skyrocketing, especially in our community. We felt hopeless. A repeated situation of violence. In COVID, it felt like there was nowhere to turn. But we had jewels in our community like Walmart, but even then, that was attacked. Looting, riots. We felt like we were under a rock. But even then, we didn't realize that we were robbing ourselves of the essentials that kept our community alive. We were roses, now without water. And now the stores were closed, where elderly get their medicine right across the street from homelessness. We felt like we couldn't win. But you know what? We live right in Dr. King's workshop. This is where hope began. We protected our children, and the writing was on the wall. Phenom, help the people believe. Help them see that we have to walk the walk. We are champions of ourselves. So we cleaned up. It was remarkable. No one asked. No one initiated. It just happened. And we began to apologize to one another and really see each other in different light and began to become responsible, do our own testing. And the stores began to reopen. The businesses open. The shopping centers open. Walmart open. And even new businesses sprouted up. Mobile boutiques. Seeing hope everywhere. We're on the move. Look at our community. You know what? Even through the rain, you might get watered even when you're in a crack. And that's when you rise. Stayed on that road of hope. To see new things and rise to new heights. That's what a community of hope can do.
Free from my pain, free from my past. Bad days are coming. I know this thing won't last. Free from my pain, free from my past. Bad days are coming. I know this it won't last. I know it won't last. I know it won't last.